Ricardo Flores was a 21-year-old man from a small village in Mexico called Tianguistengo. Ricardo was a student of law. His parents lived in the United States, working there to fund his education. They had moved to the US sometime in the early 2000s and sent money back to their family to give them a better standard of living in Mexico. Because of this, Ricardo lived with his grandmother. Ricardo's main goal in life was to study hard to become a lawyer and earn enough so that his parents could return from the United States. On the 29th of August 2018, Ricardo's uncle Alberto asked him if he would accompany him on a trip to a nearby village to pick up some building materials. Ricardo agreed. They got into Alberto's black Ford SUV and off they went. But, in a horrendous coincidence, messages had been circulating on the messaging app WhatsApp involving rumours of two men in an SUV that were out looking to kidnap children. Of course, these rumours created a great deal of fear in the village, and fear can make people do terrible things. Ricardo and Alberto had parked up not too far away from her school and drank a few beers, totally unaware of the circulating messages. These WhatsApp messages read, "Please everyone be alert, because a plague of child kidnappers has entered the country. It appears that these criminals are involved in organ trafficking. In the past few days, a number of children have disappeared. Parents, please pay attention." And so when two total strangers entered the village in an SUV, parked only a stone throw away from a school, villagers firmly believed they had found the ones responsible. The villagers gathered and approached Ricardo and Alberto inside their car. They accused the men of being the kidnappers, and they were dragged from their car and beaten. The police were soon alerted and they arrived at the scene to see what was happening. Ricardo and Alberto were then taken to a police station in a town 20 minutes away from the village. The two men were initially brought in for disturbing the peace due to the large crowd that had gathered around them, and they were kept in the station to protect them from the crowd until the police could establish what was going on. But the angry crowd had gathered outside the police station, and there a man named Francisco Martinez started a Facebook livestream on his mobile phone. During this livestream, Francisco made a call to action. He told his followers, "Come give your support. Believe me, the kidnappers are here now." Some of the residents then climbed up the town hall building and began to ring the bell to attract more of the locals to the police station, spreading the news that the two kidnappers had been caught. Rumours then spread that the police were planning to release Ricardo and Alberto, which only angered the crowd even more. Then one person in the crowd was able to get hold of a loudspeaker and began to call upon the mob to gather some of their money and purchase some cans of petrol from a gas station and take justice into their own hands. At this time, well over 100 people had gathered outside the police station, shouting for the men to be killed on the spot. The police then made a statement. They told the crowd that the men were not kidnappers and that they had all been misled. In the village, there was not a great deal of trust in the police, so as the crowd continued to grow, so did their anger. The mob then stormed the police station and dragged Ricardo and Alberto from their cells and began to beat them mercilessly. Ricardo's cousin Joanna was alerted to the situation and she rushed to the scene as quickly as she could. She said that she was crying and begging the mob to let them go, trying her best to explain that they were innocent and that there had been a misunderstanding. But the people in the mob just began to laugh at her and took photographs and videos of her crying. The mob then chanted, "Burn them." Around this time, back in the United States, Ricardo's mother Maria began being bombarded with messages on her Facebook. These messages were from people telling her that her son had been arrested and was suspected of being a kidnapper. She refused to believe such a claim, and so she clicked onto one of the links that she was sent. The link was to a live stream of one of those in the mob filming the beating. All she could do was watch as she saw her son and her brother-in-law being beaten by multiple people. She commented on the livestream, desperately begging for the mob to leave them alone and stated that they were innocent. But of course, this didn't work. Alberto's wife Jasmine had also received similar messages containing the link. She too had to watch as her beloved husband be a victim to such brutality. The mob then began to pour petrol onto the two men. Those who were in the crowd that day would later say that by the time the petrol was poured onto them, Ricardo had already perished from the beating, although Alberto was still very much alive when they set them both alight. One person who witnessed this chilling sight said that when the fire would go out, the mob would just keep pouring more petrol. Smoke from the fire could be seen from any part of the village. The crowd began to cheer and filmed the scene, believing they had just rid the world of two evil people. But that couldn't have been further from the truth. The truth was that Alberto and Ricardo were totally innocent. For over 2 hours, the mob stayed at the scene, standing around the charred bodies of the two men, taking photographs of their perceived justice. Ricardo's grandmother, the woman who had cared for him while his parents worked overseas, was called to the scene. She was tasked with the grueling job of identifying their bodies. Not long after the two men had perished, it was confirmed that they had not done anything wrong. Those who were directly responsible soon fled from the village to avoid prosecution. Ricardo's parents returned to Mexico as soon as possible. Later that afternoon, they were home. They met with Alberto's wife Jasmine, who was now a widow. What is also incredibly tragic is that Alberto left behind 3 young daughters, now without a father. Various news outlets came to cover the story, and Alberto's wife Jasmine spoke with them. She explained that Alberto was working hard to build a home from scratch for his family, and he had managed to build half of it by the time he was killed. She described her husband as a good man who did not deserve what happened to him. It also came out that the police inside the station did not follow the proper procedures. They made no attempt to call for backup to deal with the ever-growing mob of people. On the 30th of August, the day after Alberto and Ricardo were killed, a funeral service was held for them. It's thought that there were a number of people who were in the crowd the day they were killed present at the gathering. And on the 24th of October, relatives of Ricardo and Alberto gathered for a memorial service. They placed some crosses on the steps where the two men were killed. Ricardo's mother said, "The crosses should remain there forever so the people of the village can see and remember what they did." I couldn't find too much information on those who were responsible for the killings, although according to a number of articles I found online, 5 people were charged with inciting the crime following the attack taking place, and 4 more with actually carrying out the murders. A number of villagers also fled and were unable to be located. The messages that had been circulating via WhatsApp were totally false. It was fake news, and nobody in the village checked to see if the news was legitimate. No children in the community had been kidnapped, yet somehow the fear managed to grip the residents to such an extent that they were willing to commit such horrific acts. And from researching this case, it seems like such mob attacks in Mexico are fairly common. The day after the attack in a different village, some house painters were falsely accused of the same thing as Alberto and Ricardo. The mob tried to attack them, but thankfully the police were able to hold back the mob and save the lives of the innocent people. There is footage and many images that you can find online of this tragedy, although if you're easily disturbed, I would advise not to watch them. It's horrendous to see 2 innocent men being dragged and killed in that way, especially seeing the onlookers pulling out their mobile phones and recording it, watching in delight. I can't even imagine how traumatic it must have been for the relatives who watched the livestream. I think cases such as this one is a reminder not to let our emotions get the better of us, and to always strive to the standard of innocent until proven guilty. Otherwise, we greatly risk the chance of condemning innocent people to a fate they truly don't deserve.